I don't think that they are going to go away unless they have massive defeats at the ballot box. And that would require not just defeating Trump, but defeating Trump decisively so that he doesn't have the influence he does on the primaries. Right now, the MAGA wing is winning their primaries easily, and it's the non-MAGA wing that's losing. I mean, I know we love Adam Kissinger. Yeah, I think he's speaking here.
Sure.
We respect Liz Cheney. They have zero power in the Republican Party.
So we're live, so we're just rolling here. Yeah.
Right.
Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. I'll let you decide. Do you have a question?
Oh my gosh, where to begin? So Congressman Khanna, you're on the Oversight Committee. They just concluded the impeachment effort against President Biden. I think with a whimper and not a bang.
That was a total bogus effort.
Yes.
It had concluded a year ago.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why you're like, what?
And they just were dragging it out because he was going to be the candidate.
Mm-hmm.
And now they know he's not the candidate. And so they have bowed to the reality that everyone knew a year ago.
Yeah, it was, I say on my channel all the time, it's interesting how that was the one major commitment of the House Republican majority is to try to impeach the president, to fail so spectacularly. They do allege that he committed impeachable offenses in that final report, but curiously are not going to recommend a vote. Why is that, Congressman?
Well, because they don't have the votes. Because I've never seen when you have a hearing, you have Republican witnesses and Democrat witnesses, and because the Republicans have the majority, they get 3/4 of the witnesses. I've never seen before when the Republican witnesses themselves would contradict the Republican point of view.
Yeah.
They try to say, oh, there's impeachable offense, and the Republican witnesses, who they've called, would say, no, this doesn't rise to the level of impeachment. So they didn't have the votes, they didn't have the testimony, and now they're bowing to the reality.
My follow-up question to that before I turn it over to Guy is, I say this like tongue-in-cheek because, of course, it was a disaster, but, my hope was, and this was the case when President Biden was the presumptive nominee, was that Republicans would pay a price at the ballot box for this misuse of political capital, this terrible priority, especially when it was debunked time and time again. Do you think now that Vice President Harris is the nominee, that there is a potential that this impeachment effort against President Biden will still manifest at the polls, that it will still backfire against them, that they could suffer consequences politically?
Unfortunately not. I think there are other reasons that Vice President Harris is going to win, but given that they didn't actually impeach him, I think, frankly, most people don't follow the Oversight Committee, don't know what the Oversight Committee does, and they kept it from being front and center in the news. So I think had they done, though, an actual impeachment vote, and if they start to talk about impeaching Harris, then there would be a backlash.
Fair enough.
So are you saying the Kamala Harris investigation isn't going to go anywhere?
Have they already announced?
They've already gone.
I know they're doing the border, whatever. She never was the border czar.
Right.
From the day one, her goal was to deal with economic development in Latin America.
Right.
And what's wrong with that? Obviously, you want economic development there so people have less reason to migrate here. And that's all she was doing. And they made this whole conspiracy theory about it. But I think those kind of things are going to backfire.
I think so, too. I'm always curious, how do you get along with some of these Republicans? I know you try very hard to be bipartisan, but do you interact with Marjorie Taylor Greene? Have you ever tried to reach out to these people? Hey, we should get coffee and just get to know each other.
I haven't with Marjorie Taylor Greene because that one is a challenge. Is a challenge.
Yeah.
But with others, look, Andy Briggs, we share a common goal of stopping the war in Yemen when that was taking place, or not having military intervention, getting into war in Iran. And there are places where I have reached out for policy goals.
Sure.
And ultimately, I got criticized, why are you working at all with Matt Gaetz? And the reality was he was working to stop the war, and where kids in Yemen were dying. And my view is I'll put anything aside if it's for the good of people. And that's how I try to approach it.
I appreciate that. And I just like that you get to share that. I always try to pull that out of you if I get a chance to talk to you, because I think bipartisanship is so important. It's a legislative body. You got to work with anybody you can to get stuff done.
And they're all there because of the voters. I mean, they represent people. And we've got to get to a point where we can respect voters without compromising our ideals. So I have never said, okay, I'm going to sign on to a anti-reproductive rights or anti-LGBTQ or pro-corporate tax cut bill. People know I'm a strong progressive, but I'm willing to look for where there are areas of common ground. And I just think we need more of that.
One more question. question I'll pass to my colleague. You had a great op-ed in the Wall Street Journal recently where you talked about bringing manufacturing to America, and you had 3 points in there, but your third one was about immigration.
Yeah.
And how the Republicans' rhetoric on it is just dead wrong. How do you change that? Because Americans have this negative view of these migrants when they've been a blessing, and our economy is the envy of the world, partly because of that.
They really have, and they spend money, and people forget that.
Yeah.
They pay taxes, they contribute to Social Security, they can't get Social Security, but they pay taxes to Social Security. They're spending money creating jobs. But I think the point I made in the Wall Street Journal, which is really important to understand, is J.D. Vance and the Republican platform is not just about securing the border or folks who are undocumented.
Right.
They are saying that they need to reduce legal immigration. You know, they keep making this, oh, we're for legal immigration. No, they're not. They want to reduce legal immigration. That's their own words. And you look at the steel industry, for example, Lorenzo Gonzalez, who's the CEO of the biggest U.S. steel industry, Cleveland-Cliffs, he's a Brazilian immigrant. And he's doing incredible work to expand the steel industry. And they've got tons of incredible immigrants. And what the Republicans are saying is let's lower the threshold of legal immigrants. They're just going to go to Canada. They're going to go to Europe. They're going to go and start businesses there and create jobs there.
Yeah, fair enough.
So, Guy is emphasizing the importance of bipartisanship. I've always found it's hard. I mean, I do appreciate your efforts to do so, but you also have to have a party that will reciprocate. You have to have a good faith party. And quite frankly, sort of seeing that on the outside, I don't see much good faith from the current iteration of the Republican Party. It's the least productive iteration of Congress since the Great Depression, according to documents. And it's something that we don't see from Democrats when you're in the majority. Like when Speaker Pelosi was running the House of Representatives during the Trump administration, it was still more productive than what we're seeing right now. We're favorited to win the majority in the House in this upcoming election. But if we don't, do you expect that MAGA Republicans will have learned their lesson from the dysfunction of this past term? Or do you expect if they keep the majority, they will continue to be obstructionists and dysfunctional under a Harris administration?
The latter. I don't think that they are going to go away unless they have massive defeats at the ballot box. And that would require not just defeating Trump, but defeating Trump decisively so that he doesn't have the influence he does on the primaries. Right now, the MAGA wing is winning their primaries easily, and it's the non-MAGA wing that's losing. I mean, I know we love Adam Kissinger. I think he's speaking here. Sure. We respect Liz Cheney. They have zero power in the Republican Party. And they have zero influence in the Republican Party. So until that changes, you're going to have the obstructionism in that party.
Before I pass over to my colleague here, Mr. Beat, I guess my follow-up question would be, the selection of Governor Walz by Vice President Harris suggests, this is a man, when he's governor of Minnesota, he leverages power. He's in the majority, and so with a single, margin in the Minnesota legislature, he passes his agenda. I'm in power, you're not. I'm going to pass my agenda.
I love Walz.
I love it too. If Democrats take the majority, will we see, I guess, a more progressive agenda? Will we see Democrats leverage power, bring that fire, bring that heat that we see Governor Walz do in Minnesota? Yes,
and we did when we had the Congress for 2 years with President Biden. We got inflation reduction, largest climate bill, American Rescue Plan, $100 billion to schools, child tax credit, largest infrastructure bill. Those were all party line votes. Right. There was not a single Republican. So we will have a bold agenda. Now, I think what we got to do is tackle the debt that people have in this country: medical debt, credit card debt, college debt, vocational education debt. All these people are drowning in debt. Cap the interest rate on credit cards so you aren't paying 30%. Have free public college. I had to take out over $100,000 of student loans, and that thing kept piling up because you have 6-8% interest. It's crazy. I never got down to the principal for decades. Have free medical care in this country in terms of Medicare for all. We have got to, as a Democratic Party, address the actual pocketbook issues of why Americans are hurting. And most Americans I know, they can't afford a house, their rents are too high, and they're drowning in debt. And if we start to talk about those real issues, that's when we're going to build a sizable majority.
Fair enough. Mr. B.
Yeah, just so you know who I am, I run an American political history channel on YouTube.
Love it.
So that's where I'm coming from.
Love it.
And yeah,
What's your favorite speech in American history?
I mean, Gettysburg Address. I know it's cliche.
No, it's a great one. Mine is Frederick Douglass's Composite Nation, 1869, where he defends Chinese immigration.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one. Look at you. Well, yeah, so I wanted to bring up the issues I care about the most just because thinking about how we got ourselves into this mess to begin with, where the minority has such power. And so, like, I want to get your thoughts and also, like, the vibes from your colleagues about voting reform, particularly for things, ending gerrymandering, reforming, if not abolishing, the Electoral College, and ranked choice voting or some other kind of voting that's not first past the post. And then finally, something that maybe is not talked about a lot, I bet, expanding the size of the House that you work in. So we've had 435 members since 1929. So are you hearing, do you care about these issues?
I do. I am all for the reform of the Electoral College, and that 270 is the best way to do it. There's this organization getting states to voluntarily commit to vote for the popular vote winner. I think that's an easier way than having an amendment passed, and I support that effort. I am all for ranked choice voting. I'm all for looking at expanding the numbers of the House because right now you're not as representative. You're just too many people that you're having to represent. And I think having a more granular democracy where people really get to know their member of Congress will help. And I have proposed a reform on ranked choice voting and having a multi-candidate districts with Don Beyer.
Representation. There's a colleague of yours from Oregon who's going to be leaving actually soon. What was his name again? I don't know. But he introduced a bill last year to expand the size of the House.
Interesting.
Yeah, so like I think
Peter Fazio maybe, or Blumenauer.
Yes, Blumenauer, the bicycle pin.
Is great.
Anyway, I just wonder because all other issues that are important to people, I think, are rooted in the fact that we can't. I mean, the filibuster is another example. Like, how do you think that this is something that your colleagues are taking seriously? I know you take it seriously.
I think filibuster they are because they saw that we didn't get Roe versus Wade codified. We didn't get voting rights. We didn't get an assault weapons ban. We didn't get a minimum wage increase because of the filibuster. And that, I think, is something that the Democrats, the next time we have an opportunity, a majority, House, Senate, President, we're going to get rid of that.
That's exciting. Congressman Khanna, I do have a question for you. I know that I can't remember. You don't sit on the Judiciary Committee.
I do not.
But I am curious, but given that you're so exceptionally well read and you're like a bold progressive, I do want to ask you about the Supreme Court because it's a recurring pet peeve of mine, a recurring thesis of my channel. We have so many conservative institutions in this country that just skew towards the Republican Party, gerrymandering, the filibuster, the Senate, the way it's structured, it gives outsized advantage to the right. The Supreme Court of the United States seems to be a real impediment to progressive reform in this country because is there any law you pass, in theory, the Supreme Court could strike it down because it's a federal statute. Do you support changes to the United States Supreme Court reforms? Do you think they're necessary?
I think the term limits that the president's proposed, he's basically adopted the bill that I had introduced 4 years ago from Don Beyer. And that says that a justice should only serve 18 years. Every president gets 2 appointments. It would significantly diminish the partisanship on the court. It would diminish the vitriol, and it would diminish the influence of the court.
Yeah. So you would support pretty aggressive reforms.
I would, and I think the term limits is one that is doable because it's also popular.
Do you think that the Harris-Walz campaign will make it more of a front-running issue, or do you think that that's something going to be after they win the election? Do you think they'll campaign on Supreme
I think
Court?
they should because it's overwhelmingly popular, and it'll help get out our base. And right now, and it highlights, it's connected to standing up for Roe versus Wade and standing up for the court being in touch with modern life. I mean, the court, you have people there 40, 50 years, appointed 40, 50 years ago who don't understand what it's like to live in modern America. That was not supposed to be the case.
I completely agree. So I love it. I think we're out of time here, but Congressman, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Having me.
Yeah, you're one of the coolest members of Congress because you do stuff like this. So,
well, I appreciate it. I appreciate your history focus because we needed to really understand American history to move forward.